Welcome back, everybody, to Mid Tier Thoughts. I'm joined today with Mike and Lat65 Shooting. I'll let him from Instagram. I'll let him introduce himself here shortly. Real quick, just to pay the bills. Make sure that you guys, if you're looking for coffee, go to the link in the description for Blackout Coffee. You get 20% off when you use our discount code, and we get some money out of that too. So that way we can help make better audio visual quality for you guys, upgrade our setup if you like. With that being said, Lat65 Shooting, introduce yourself.
Hey guys, semi long time listener, first time here, but my name's Drake. I'm 22 out of Interior, Alaska. Not military, not law enforcement. Had an interest and then decided to go to the dark side, and I work fire EMS up here. So yeah, it's a little different. It's not anything that you have experience with, Austin. I'm not sure, Mike. Do you have? Are you military or I don't? Oh no, you just yeah, you are military. Yeah, so kind of coming in from the civilian side of things, it's a little different being not having a lot of like the firearms know-how that some other guys that I hang out with have. The necessarily like, oh, I could go into a room, off a certain standard, the military standard, but I have, a good amount of EMS knowledge. I've worked a couple of trauma scenes, put a tourniquet on a few times. So
yeah, debatably way more important in the civilian sector than any sort of law enforcement or military, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple where I've just been out and about, and something happens, and you're right there.
Yeah, especially in the civilian world, it's like it could happen anywhere. I mean, obviously, anything can happen. An active shooter or something like that can happen. But up in Alaska, it's way more likely someone hurt themselves by accident and they need help.
And not only that, in Alaska, you can drive, maybe 15, 20 minutes and you're out of cell service. Not even SOS on the iPhone is working. So, and
that's a crazy thought, man. I never really think about that, but yeah, you were truly alone.
Well, you got wildlife is a legitimate threat up there.
So actually, weirdly enough, we had a wildlife call recently on a main road. A dude in his Chevy hit a moose on the side of the road.
I was just thinking you were going to say moose.
He hit a moose on the side of the road. So we had to come out with the engine. We had to block traffic. We had dudes on both ends. Everybody stay away from the moose. And how it works up here is the state troopers will come out, and if they deem that it's too hurt to survive, they'll dispatch it. And then what they do is they, call into their bosses and they go over this thing called the roadkill list. So even up here for like roadkill animals, especially moose, they don't go to waste. Not even the state lets them go. So they'll run down the list and yep, this person is up. Hey, there's a roadkill moose. Go butcher it up. It's yours. So you have people
that's pretty sick.
Yeah, they come out.
That's actually pretty dope.
Yeah, they come out and they take care of the moose, and they get some free meat.
Oh yeah, was the dude big dead? Can we cut him up and eat him?
No, the dude was perfectly fine.
Dude, this is Alaska, bro. We're alone. All right, heavy winter. We're eating people.
I've seen The Gray. I understand how this works.
Dude, watch me get Jamestown in this bitch real fast.
I've seen 30 Days of Night. I know what happens in Nome.
Oh no! Don't get me started.
Between 30 Days of Night and Balto, I'm ready for Alaska.
What is that one thing? The Thing or whatever? The alien
that was Antarctica. That was Antarctica.
Oh, same.
Yeah. The other cold place.
They're both frozen, death places. So,
dude, it gets bad with the wind. Like you get the -35. That's just normally, and then you stack wind on top of that, and it's.
I like that you said -35 normally. Yeah. Before the wind.
It's before the wind. So with wind chill, we can get -50 and colder.
It still blows my mind that people somehow live there before like thermal glows and shit.
Yeah, well, I mean like you've had like the Eskimos or Inuit or whatever the politically correct name is.
You can't say Eskimo anymore, bro.
There's a lot of different. So that's something that is actually really unique about us is you have to be very, very particular with the native tribes because they're not on a reservation. They're out and about. They're part of the community is a big thing, and not only are they part of the community, they're practicing their culture. So
Aren't they like the only people allowed to kill like certain whales up in the water still?
Certain whales, and there's certain. Oh, sorry, my dog is barking. So there are actually certain birds, like if I'm trying to remember. I think it's an. I think if it's a raven feather, or
where
like
if
eagle
they're like an
feather,
extinct species, it doesn't matter. They still get the rights to kill it because it's
Well,
their tribe or something.
not only that, but like even if the feather is on the ground, like the bird lost it, like normally through natural causes, like you can't touch it unless you're native.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I didn't know that.
It's just one of those. We have our little isms up here, and that's just one of them, I guess.
That's like the bald eagle. The tribes around here are still allowed to collect the bald eagle feathers, but we aren't. Like if you're not part of the tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
It's pretty crazy. It's also like super weird to think about like entire reservations of people that we're still paying for. I don't want to, throw that out there, but I didn't, make anyone walk on a trail of tears. But taxes still take it.
See, I've always had an interesting thought that they're technically independent nations. They're sovereign states. Like, what if one day they just decide to start their own army?
Oh God.
You think it would? You think you could join?
You know what I mean? They're just like, yeah, we're just doing this now. I mean, no, for real. Like, I've thought about it though, too. So since they can literally make their own rules. If the ATF was like, yeah, you can't have all this stuff, and then someone got smart, and how they do fireworks stands on reservations.
Oh,
they
no.
just sold machine guns.
So every summer up here, because of our how bad the wildfires get up here, Alaska's burning in the summer. We have winter and then we have wildfire season. Some people joke and it's construction season, but it's wildland season. So every 4th of July, specifically in the city in North Pole, the fire chief will come out and he's like, no fireworks sales in city limits. You can't buy fireworks.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, this is a free country. If I want to light off a cannon in my backyard, I will. All right,
hey, I have to throw this out there real quick since you mentioned cannon. Mike, when you and I both worked at the gun store we worked at, I don't remember if you remember this guy, but there was a guy that would come in every now and then. He owned a black powder cannon, and since you can't find cannonballs, he would get bowling balls, right, and shoot those out of his black powder cannon. But because they have the holes in them, he'd light them off, and they just sound like.
Oh, like you could hear him whistle.
I'm just like, can you imagine being some dude 100 yards out? Just like, what is that? And your buddy just gets smoked by a bowling ball.
So I have a video tucked away somewhere from one of the machine gun clubs, but I've actually gotten to watch it's not a bowling ball cannon. It was a mortar. He made a mortar.
That's dope.
And so that's where you really hear the whistling. And it's like, oh my God.
It's
terrifying.
It's so eerie too.
I think it's scarier is over in Ukraine and stuff when the drones just drop the mortar on top of you or drop a grenade on top of you. That's worse. You don't even hear it. You're a slight buzz, and then all of a sudden it's just boom.
Dude, the drone noises that they make, just the small hum of 4 tiny little motors, is going to be the helicopter noises to the Vietnam generation to our generation.
Dude, 100%. Because if you look at the videos, most of the times they don't even realize it's getting dropped on them. They're just chilling, and all of a sudden they look up for a split second, and the bomb goes off.
Yeah, it's wild, dude. Man-made horrors beyond my comprehension.
You've seen,
yeah. I was going to ask you, so I'm assuming in Alaska we could say it's a fairly free state, at least in regards to guns. I would assume so.
To be direct, we have 2 ATF agents in the entire state, and they're 400 miles south of me.
He's like, and I know where both they live. We're both where the kids go to school.
for legal reasons, that is a joke. No. So,
have you ever seen that meme where it's the Minecraft characters? This is when my FBI agent opens up my window tabs, and it's a whole layout of his house.
No. Yes, I see.
We're gonna get on the Instagram next week, and we're just gonna see his whole channels deleted and be like, oh.
I'm gonna pull gonna pull into work, and there's gonna be dudes in suits sitting talking to my deputy chief. It's gonna be like, no. So there was actually they do work pretty frequently. They do work pretty frequently, unfortunately, with the Alaska State Troopers. It's not something they're exactly proud of. I can name of a few. I can think of a few troopers who are, very like, hey, that's a federal issue, if you know what I'm talking about. And but a really, really big one up here actually is them working with the DEA. And the DEA, from what I've heard, like those are the guys, even worse than the ATF, like that you don't want to fuck around with. And actually,
I've heard.
Go ahead.
I've heard that there's a lot of felons in Alaska because they don't like their extradition stuff is different. Like it's harder to be extradited.
Absolutely correct. Sadly,
yeah.
We are a very free state, and with that comes some gifts, and with that comes some curses, I guess is the way you could put it.
Yeah.
Specifically in the town that I live in, we've got a pretty bad homeless issue, and that's not because I want to say of any like one politician, any one policy, delve into that. It is simply just, mental health. We are the number one state for suicide in the nation.
If there was one place I would not want to be homeless, it would be Alaska.
Fucking Alaska.
And
Hawaii all day.
But as young as 16, 17, I started losing friends to suicide, and that was kind of a big turning point for me, and also part of the reason why I'm in the career field that I'm in now. And then actually just yesterday, a friend passed away for an unknown cause, and some of my friends who also knew him responded to that call. And so we're waiting to hear back from the medical examiner. But
I'm sorry to hear that, man.
You can't always know what's going on. You can do your best, but yeah. But moving away from that, with the felons, my first ever experience actually living on my own was when I was 20. I just turned 21. I had lived at a couple of fire stations where they had live-in programs. So you live there, your rent is free. The shifts you work there are your rent. You just have to pay for everything else. And I moved out into a one-room apartment with a bathroom for like $700 a month on the corner of 27th and Mercier. And just a month and a half before I had moved in there, and I didn't even make the connection until after I'd signed the lease and everything, a guy had been boxed in by 3 cars and shot through his windshield.
Nice.
Nice.
It keeps the rent cheap.
So after I
like
turned,
where the guy just goes and shoots in the sky. Like I'm keeping the property value down.
Yeah. So the day I turned 21 is when I started, concealed carrying every day. I went out, bought a holster. A friend who worked at the local Sportsman's Warehouse, which is like our Cabela's, gave me a solid deal on a holster. I got a solid deal on a Glock and a private sale from another friend. And started concealed carrying, and then went from there. Got a weapon mounted light, but pretty much every day to and from work. And I'm gone for like 48 hours, so I'm at work sitting there like, is somebody like smashing in my windshield or like my window right now, like grabbing my stuff. And then every time I'd come home, it's like, okay, the door's locked, the lights are off, the window's still there. Every time I come out like to my vehicle, and it's just you start actually thinking about that a little bit more. And it's like, well, what if this, then this, and then if this, then this, and you start actually planning. It's like, what would I do in this situation?
How big of a town is Fairbanks? Like population wise?
Population wise, I would have to look, but it is not
number.
Rough
guess.
Ooh, rough guess.
Like,
I want to say
talking like
maybe
100,000, like 30,000, a million.
Maybe like 15, 17,000 people.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The majority of our population actually is going to be both Fort Wainwright, that's the Army base, kind of in the center of town, and then
well, that's a crime problem.
Yeah, there's the start of that. And then Alaskan Air Force Base. So We got
Okay.
two major military installations right next to us.
Yeah, no wonder you got such a high crime rate.
I
don't know what it is, but there is a direct correlation between your vicinity to a local military installation and your vicinity to high crime rates.
Every month there is some Army guy, some Air Force guy in the news for something, and it's horrible to see. And actually, the recent one, there was recently a double LMTV rollover out on the Yukon training area, and
I just read something about that. Didn't like 3 people die?
2 did, and I sat and I listened to the entire thing. Because I was actively texting with the dude who was the IC headed out there from that fire department. Like, we have a crew ready to go for you. So
that's wild.
And say what you want about the military on Wainwright, but they had a flight ceiling of about 500 feet and only decreasing as they went out. And the mast pilots still flew. They got permission to fly, and they flew probably about 6, 7, 8 guys out of there. So
wow.
Damn.
Yeah, but that was the first snow of the year, and I think it's especially up here it spurred a lot of thought among my guys talking about it, where having listened to the entire thing start to finish, knew exactly what was going on. They had to shift the LZ for their helo, which they had a preset LZ. It's out on their training area. They had pre-established landing zones, in case of this, and they had to shift it because they had total whiteout conditions.
Wow.
So it was like, just
I think
reminder.
That's a good thing. I wanted to talk to you. A good way, I think, to segue into what I wanted to talk to you about too, is that I think that you being in Alaska and being in kind of a Minuteman community type of thing like that, I think that really opens the door to inherently you're going to have some quality, I would hope anyway, some kind of quality advice for cold weather training and how to deal with cold weather, how to pack with cold weather, training cold weather, like make sure you don't die in cold weather than some of the rest of us, because you literally have to do that even when you're not training.
Yeah.
So I think, if you want to kind of go over some of the considerations and stuff you guys go over, I know you said like it gets down to -35, which is really cold. And kind of like what kind of things do you guys like I'm imagining you guys walking around like the dude from A Christmas Story with your arms stuck all the way out with how many layers you're wearing. But like if you want to cover a little bit of like what you guys do to stay warm.
Yeah, sure. So the biggest thing, like just for your home life, not before we even get into like the considerations when you go out and do like a patrol, is your home life. If you're a homeowner in an Arctic area and you're running off heating oil, you're running off LNG, like that's your heating system. You're running off electric for whatever reason. Some people, that's their thing, I guess. Consider an alternate heat source, and whether that's like you have a couple of like the big buddy heaters like stored aside in the garage with some propane for a rainy day, or or you're able to get a wood stove, preferably a wood stove. Some people use pellet stoves and like they work great. They're efficient. They put out a lot of heat. But wood stoves will run when pellet stoves won't. You need electricity to run a wood stove, or sorry, a pellet stove.
Yeah.
So, power goes out, your place is going to be without heat for 3 days, back in like 2010, 2011, my home, me, my parents, my sister, we were without power for 3 days. 3 straight days, no power. And, the only reason our house didn't freeze, all our pipes were still good and everything, is because Dad had the forethought to buy a wood stove. So, making sure you have some sort of heat source with you in your vehicle, if you're going out for a long time. So when things break into those -20, -25, -30 conditions, everything starts like at home. Is your running vehicle or your level 7 Patagonia, whatever you've got for cold weather gear isn't going to matter, if everything's frozen in your home.
Yeah.
So, back in, I think I said initially, like 2009, 2010, somewhere around then, I was a kid. We were without power for 3 complete days. And, that's because in our area, the electrical grid is a monopolized service. There's one association that runs it. They won't let anybody else in. They won't bury the electric lines. So, when a tree falls down and takes out all the power lines, you've got an entire area that's just without power until they get back out and put the lines back up. So, yeah, we had a blackout for 3 days. And the only reason that our home didn't freeze is because, Dad put a wood stove in. And that was like my lesson as a kid is, I always had to be the one to bring in the wood, and then Dad would, make me stand there and watch him like put the wood in and, show me how to do it safely. And I was like, oh, this is boring. Like I want to go play Minecraft or something like that. And, then eventually that happened. And I was like, I'm not cold because the wood stove is going. So just little things like that. If you can come up with something other than, your heating oil or your LNG, whatever your house is running on, and have something as a backup that's, doesn't require electricity, doesn't require a pump, then that's fantastic. Even if it's, a couple of big buddy heaters with, a couple tanks of propane stashed away in the garage for a rainy day, you hope while they're there, if you need them, you hope you never do. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if I'm doing like a long road trip, like if I take the drive down to Anchorage, which, can be, 6, 7, if the roads are really bad, 8-hour drive, and I get caught in between somewhere there and, vehicle dies, vehicle breaks down, I don't want to freeze. I'm going to have to sit and wait for somebody to come to me, or I'm going to have to go to somebody. So,
yeah, that's a good point. Like even if your vehicle breaks down on those kind of temperatures, like you don't have a lot of time.
You're fucked. Like if you don't have some sort of winter bag that's got, emergency clothes, even dry, as long as they're dry clothes, even, because hypothermia,
Right.
what you can get hypothermia, 40, 50 degrees outside, you get into the wrong pool of water and fucking you're soaked through, your teeth are chattering, and you got to warm up. First step is to get them out of the wet clothes into dry clothes. That's what's going to help. That's what's going to help your patient most. So some sort of like backup set of clothes, hopefully something warm weather oriented. Hand warmers. When I go out, I usually carry some sort of chest rig, and I'll throw it in the bag. A couple of magazines, emergency snacks, emergency stash of water. I'll throw my rifle's a 12.5, so it's a little more convenient for me. I'll just throw it in the back seat. And the troopers are really chill. Like if you get pulled over on the highway or something, you just look at them, be like, "Hey, I got a firearm," and everything's all cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody has guns in Alaska.
Yeah. Right.
You're not respected if you don't. So definitely having a rifle and a couple mags is not, especially if you're going 300 plus miles. It's not a bad idea. Let's see. Spare tire. Everybody should have a spare tire. That's basic. Rules of
Not the spare tire, but make sure you keep the tools in your car to change the tire.
Yes.
Because I have made that mistake where I'm like, oh, I gotta take this out for something and forgot to put it back in. Then I blow a tire and I'm like, sweet, I have a spare and no way to change it.
I had to actually a while ago. I had to drive out the highway, in the Anchorage direction. My dad was coming back with his big enclosed trailer from a trip, or sorry, not his big enclosed trailer, his fifth wheel. He has a fifth wheel toy hauler, and he had the wrong set of tools for the spare tire. So I had to bring out an electric like impact driver for him and everything. So, but definitely good rules of thumb in terms of like how how your equipment is staged. If you have the equipment to put together a bag and just leave it in your vehicle, like you got a spare set of bunny boots, snow pants, jacket, everything. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, it just has to be able to keep you warm. You may not have to move or fight in it. This is your oh shit like vehicle kit.
Yeah.
And you can afford to leave that in the vehicle, then that's great. But your vehicle is below a quarter tank of gas and you go to start your vehicle and get it running, before you leave the bar for the night. You've been out with the guys, had a couple drinks, and you come outside and suddenly your vehicle's dead. You got no fuel and everybody's headed home. Who's going to take you home? Your phone's dead, nobody to call, bar's not letting you back in. Like, what are you gonna do? So, I was always raised as a kid, leave at least quarter tank of gas, but that kind of went out the window, especially when I started working fire EMS and I started having to drive to stations for recalls. We drop a fire, everybody goes, you'd go in, pick up another apparatus, move it to the headquarters station, or you'd take it to the scene. Except, that drive to the station is like 30 minutes. So I got to drive 30 minutes to another station and get an apparatus. So half tank in the winter, especially, is normally where I like to leave my truck. Anything lower below that, I'm headed straight to the gas station before I go anywhere.
Yeah.
Hand warmers, foot warmers.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So I have a question for you. Typically around here, I like to keep water in my vehicle as well. How do you keep water in your vehicle, or do you? Is there a way? Because it always gets so cold that I imagine it just bust open any packaging that you have it in.
So I try to be good. I'm really on and off about taking like a full bottle of water and not like, a plastic one, like a full like hydro flask or something with me wherever I go, so that I at least have water when I leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm really bad about drinking water. That's just one of my things is I don't ever drink enough water.
Okay.
There's some things with like some thermal sleeves that people put around like their Nalgene's that I've seen do really well.
Mm-hmm.
Not speaking for a vehicle, but just in general, like I had a Haley strategic flat pack for a while, and I would throw like my hydration bladder in that and run that inside my layers, like on hikes for like 3-4 hours, so that my body heat was just keeping my water from freezing.
Mm-hmm.
But for a vehicle, unless you're like in it all day and that water's not going to freeze up, then I don't really, myself, I haven't found a way to keep it from freezing other than like if you're going to do that, keep it in a backpack, like a small backpack.
Yeah.
And, if you're going inside for, 2-3 hours, or you're going to be at work or whatever, bring it in. Keep your water from freezing.
Yeah. I was wondering about that too with even with your house, like you said, you'd lose power for multiple days and things. Water storage in your house must be pretty difficult too if they're all going to start freezing as well.
I was more concerned about how do you keep your pipes from rupturing.
Good
that,
luck.
like,
good luck with the pipes. Good
Yeah.
luck.
Yes. Whoever's cornered the market on plumbing is just making a killing.
There's a lot of plumbing companies. So one of the guys I shoot with, actually, he manages one of the ones in the area. So he got in on the right business because he's got some really good gear. But
Hell yeah.
no, let's see, where was I going with that? I had a brain fart. Your pipes are probably going to go if you don't have like a wood stove or something. You need something to put out a lot of thermal energy in order to keep the walls and then into the insulation and the pipes from freezing. So good luck with that.
So that one's just going to be you better invest it in a good stove.
Yeah, hopefully you've got a good stove. Hopefully you have some sort of alternate plan in case. There are people in the area who do haul their own water. They, put the big plastic tanks in the beds of their trucks, and they'll make the voyage each week or each month, however much it's needed to, deliver water to their house.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people live in dry cabins, and it's not their problem.
Yeah, that's the thing though. Even here in Idaho, like, there's a company not too far from me that does all the water hauling, and there's a lot of like homestead housing that they just got a big cistern full of water that needs filled up, and they fill it up once a month, and come wintertime, good luck.
Yeah, but kind of moving out of the home considerations a little bit and more into the cooler stuff. If you're gonna go on a trip, the standard, tell a family member, tell your spouse. I have a girlfriend, hopefully going to be a fiance someday. Usually I let her know, where I'm going, with who, how long I'm expected to be gone, or, somebody I know, somebody will be here who knows ultimately. Make sure your vehicle's good on gas, you're not leaving anything behind, and then start checking your kit, because if you forget one of your layers, in 35 below, it's going to be a rough time. We actually attempted a winter overnight in 10 below, We've had a few guys. Not everyone has been able to get around to it yet. To have at least attempted some sort of wintertime overnight, where we've gone out, middle of nowhere. We've dug down into the snow, laid a tarp out over whatever, tried building a fire, everything. And we did one in -10, but then there was wind chill, which you factor that in, you're well into the -20s. We haven't even touched the normal like December, January, February thermal drop. And you're moving, you're hiking, everything's good, you're laughing, you're keeping working through the snow on your snowshoes, and you're staying warm. And then the second you get to camp and you're just sitting, that cold starts creeping in on you. So maybe having an extra set of thicker layers for like when you're sitting not doing anything is probably your best bet. I had a set of layers, and for the first ever time that I attempted one, my rule was if those layers came out, I was going to start thinking about hiking out. Just as a safety thing.
Yeah.
Because we were there, no cell service, none of us had working radios. It's the middle of the night. We had dudes night vision freezing over. We had a set
Wow.
set of bridged PVS 14s that were totally inoperable because he had one of the adjustable apertures, the like modified camera lens for focusing caps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally inoperable. You couldn't.
Did it just like froze?
It just
closed.
Froze closed. I mean, you could pull them off, but it wasn't worth it at that point.
See, I think that's another thing too that some people don't realize is it's not just the gear in the sense of like, obviously you have the gear of like cold weather clothing and gloves, hats, things like that, right? But also like the actual components of your gear and like electronic things and things like that, to where it's like, how do they react in the cold?
Yep. And I've had going even a further step than that, specifically into weaponry, like I've had rifles malfunction on me because of how cold it was. Everybody's like, oh, my rifle can run, 2,000 rounds without cleaning. And then I just throw a little bit of lube, and it's like, okay. And then, you freeze that carbon and your rifle just sits for a while.
Yeah.
You're going to run into some issues. I even had with my Glock, I had pretty much a hang fire. I pulled the trigger and nothing happened. And then half a second later, there was a bang because, the spring had to push the firing pin through all the frozen carbon because I didn't clean my goddamn gun, which was scary for me because that was my carry piece at the time. And it still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, pull the trigger and half a second later is when it goes bang. It's like, no, I want it to go bang now. And, I had that happen, and I think that was, I immediately went home, stripped it apart, and cleaned the living fuck out of it. So
yeah, there's nothing more concerning than the gun that you trust your life to not working.
Yeah. Especially, the firearm that most everybody carries every single day is, 9 times out of 10, it's a pistol, unless you're
right.
military deployed in some sort of combat theater.
Yeah.
So, it gives you a little bit of a perspective on like actually taking care of your equipment, making sure stuff stays warm. Okay, if you have 2 of something and you're out in the woods or whatever, like this thing's getting cold, I have a second one, I'm going to rotate them out, shove the other one in your layers. It's rough.
Do you notice like a more exaggerated battery drain on your electronic components, like red dots and stuff?
Yes. I actually killed a set of batteries in a Surefire. Just using it intermittently, hiking in the dark one time, my here we go again, night vision freezing over. I had my it was both of my lenses when I was running a normal Neurotos arm. They were sitting right above where all my breath was going, and it was condensating on my unit. So my night vision was like frozen over. There was a solid layer of frost, and I couldn't see through it. So I started having to use my rifle light in order just to like check ahead of me, because we've got wolves, we've got moose, we've got, well, not bears in the winter, but you're bound to run into something that you're probably going to want to know about in advance. So I started just every 20 or so feet, I'd flash my rifle up and I'd do a scan. Or the 2 guys that were with me hiking out at that point, one of them had a mod light OKW, so he's throwing light, and he'd stop every now and then and he'd scan with the light. And I actually, just in the space of,
Gotta
probably,
look out for that Windussi.
oh God, that was not a night to find it, specifically that night. If there was ever a night to not find the Windussi, that was it. That was awful. And I'll get into that in a second. But in that like 2.5, 3 hour space of hiking out, I killed an entire set of batteries. Just like I said, intermittently, I'm just gonna scan real quick, maybe 10, 15 seconds. Yeah, but battery drain is a big concern.
I think that really speaks to the importance of testing your gear and your kit and going out there and training, like even in not being a fair weather person when it comes to training, but like going out in those austere conditions, doing it as safely as possible, obviously, but running your stuff through those really crappy conditions, because if you're only training when it's nice out, I mean, I know people who are like, oh, it's raining, I'm not gonna go, like,
So
okay, well, whatever.
That's a huge thing in my personal life and professional life is so I work with kids who come up from the lower 48. They come up here, they go through the local fire academy at the university, and then they work at a department. And at the end of their college semester, if they've met all their grades and met all the shift requirements, everything, they get a check for their tuition, books, sometimes their food, everything. So they're up here doing that. But you get a kid from Southern California who may not be adjusted to the idea where it's like, if you're going to go hiking, you might want to carry a firearm. Or, somebody who's never seen anything colder than maybe -10 their entire life. You park them out at -35 and it sucks. And then you park them out at -35 with somebody's house on fire and, mom is running down the driveway screaming at them like, hey, my kid's inside. And they're too physically like temperaturally frozen to do anything. They can't function because you get out into that cold and it'll do something to your mind. It's demoralizing. And the only way you can adjust, you can acclimate to like an environment like that is to get out in it. You can't hide in your room and play video games all day. You can't sit and watch TV. You got to get out and, go to the store.
You got to acclimate.
Park at the far side of the parking lot and walk through it. Get outside, walk your dog or something. Take a little extra time and actually walk your dog. Don't just take them outside. Get used to the temperature.
Yeah, do it naked, covered in water.
Yes, covered in honey. so that Wendigo across the street can find you.
It's the only way you'll acclimate.
That is the only
That
way.
A lot like Uncle Regis.
You're not considered Alaskan until you've had a sexual interaction with Bigfoot.
Side note, he's a top.
It'd be crazier if he was a bottom.
He's a power bottom. That's why he's got the big feet. I mean, I think that's a great point. It's like I said, if you're not like going through that stuff, like one, to find out if your stuff works or not, but also like you said, like it's a whole different animal when you're moving in. It's a physical temperature environment that you're not used to. It's not something like, I mean, on the opposite end of that, when it comes to heat, like I know me and Mike had both spent some time in Bahrain, and I know for me, it's like, you get there and you're like, it is so hot and so muggy outside. I don't want to be outside. But if you don't spend time outside, it's always going to be nasty, right? Eventually you get used to it and it sucks a little bit less, right? So, and it's even more so like in the cold, right? So if you're not getting used to that stuff, like your body's not getting used to it, you're not getting ready for it. You don't know what gear is going to fail. And if you're trusting your life to it, you want to find that out before you have to trust your life to it.
Exactly. Ultimately, like if I wanted to have one encompassing statement for Alaska, gear, being a modern Minuteman, if that's your thing, you're not just like defending your home. If you're actively like wanting to protect your community, if you're wanting to be involved in your community at all in any sort of like helpful, meaningful way, you're a volunteer firefighter, because that's how I started. Or you're a law enforcement officer, anything like that. Have a backup plan. and making those connections with people that can help assist with your backup plan. Like, hey, my truck's dead, I need a jump, or somebody who knows how to change an alternator, or somebody who knows their way around vehicles, or somebody who knows medical. Having those people in your time of need makes your life so much easier.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point.
So yeah.
I do have to say too, I like that I know in the beginning that you were just saying, like, oh, I'm just a civilian and EMS, whatever, right? And I think like, one of the big things for me is that's like the whole reason we started this podcast. And I know we've harped on it before, but the whole point wasn't necessarily just to have a bunch of vet bros on here, but to get, everyday people, because that's the whole idea, behind mid-tier thoughts, is that this is for everybody. And this should be everyone's responsibility to live a prepared citizen lifestyle, right? Like that's what it takes to be a good American. And I think that it's really important. That's why one of the reasons I really liked having you on here and getting your perspective on here is like, one, you said you're 22, so you're a younger guy, right? You're taking personal responsibility for this, for yourself, for your community. One, you put out some pretty good content, on top of that, and you're just, you're like you said, you're a normal guy, and that just shows like that you don't have to be some kind of like Mike Glover, Dakota Meyer special operator type dude or whatever, to be like, to be able to know what you're doing and to do this, you just, all you have to do is just go out and do it.
And it's kind of funny, being a younger guy, because that has not only crept up on me in this world, it crept up on me in my professional life. My officer for my shift in my department before me, I think he turned 40 recently, and he was a lieutenant. And I don't have the rank of lieutenant now. I'm actually an engineer, but I got offered his job at 21 years old.
I'm not gonna lie. When it comes to your rank system, I have no idea what the difference between lieutenant and engineer.
Think of engineer as the dude who drives the truck in the NCOIC. Like that's
Got
the easiest way to think of it.
Sweet.
But I got offered his job, and I have a dude working under me who's 4 or 5 years older than me, and he's my engineer. I'm responsible for him. My firefighter who just he got transferred to a different shift recently, he was older than me. Both the guys that were paid for my shift were older than me, and I'm the guy in charge of them. And I think that like gives some credit to the younger guys out there who may be listening, where somebody says something about a drill, somebody brings something up to you about your form for something, the way you have your backpack. Maybe take a second to stop and listen, because we're not all as clueless as you think, and a lot of us actually give a shit about what we're trying to tell you.
Absolutely. I that's one thing I think I know I've talked about a bunch before as well, is kind of like that idea of, I like to refer to it as military elitism, but it's not just the military. It's with a lot of aspects of life. You get someone who's just convinced that they know what they're doing because they have more time on it, or they've spent more time in an organization than you have. Right? Doesn't mean they know anything, but they've just spent more time in that organization than you have. So therefore, you possibly couldn't match their knowledge.
And circling back around to that, my previous lieutenant, he was Army. He deployed to Iraq, everything. And, you could look at him and you're like, all right, this dude did some shit. He's got a scarred up face. He talks with a lisp. He has a speech disability. He walks with a little bit of a limp, and, he's a pretty badass motherfucker. He went and done some stuff. Some of the stories he had, be they true, be they not, you could look at him and tell he did some shit. And then, of course, because I work with one of the guys that I hang out with, around the range, in the community pretty regularly. So that's kind of cool, having a guy immediately on hand. And then a couple other people were like interested in what I do. And then, I'd just show them. I'd pull up my Instagram, be like, this is what I do in my off time. And, it's me at the range, running around, me in the woods, whatever. So, some people are like, oh, that's cool. And some people are like, oh, so you're just like a LARPer or something, right? I catch shit for it all the time. Nobody ultimately cares. But my lieutenant was like the person who cared the most, because he'd be like, wait, what are you looking at? And he'd show him, because I don't fucking care, I'm not doing anything illegal. And he'd be like, oh, you're doing this wrong, oh, you're doing this wrong, like this is how you pie off a corner and everything, when he's teaching stuff from 2003 2004, out of date information. And I'm out here learning from dudes who not only have learned from the best, without going into too much detail, but some guys who are really good about what they do because they do it 100 times every single day, but it's up to date, it's what is most current. So you kind of start to see that shift in how do I say this, what the modern civilian and what the modern Minuteman is capable of. You're going to have dudes who learned one way and they're going to do it one way the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
exactly.
And if you're the modern guy who's a fresh template, you've learned nothing, you are trying to get into this world, and you find a good resource, somebody who knows that, guess what? Things change, tactics change, gear changes, and they're willing to keep you up to speed and get you up to their level, then you're already leagues ahead of the guy 4 doors down.
I heard a guy on a different podcast make the comment where he was like, even these special operator guys, right? They all go out there and they're like, oh, I know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, like you retired in 2006, and then the guy that you were talking to retired in 2014. Like, and then, between then and then now it's 2023. Those 3 different stages have seen a huge shift in changes at different aspects of the global war on terror, right?
Yeah,
and on top of it, like, all of the experience is coming from the global war on terror in an environment where, support's on standby. You've got massive amounts of intel and every weapon platform known to man at your beck and call to do to do all kinds of extra support. And it's like, we haven't really been in a conflict in a very long time where it's been infantry just on their own in the middle of nowhere with nothing.
And that kind of leads into my next kind of resource for me personally. Just watching, because I live in a really heavy military area. And up here on Fort Wainwright, on the Yukon training area, this winter, we had JPMRC, and it was all the guys from Joint Base Richmond. I think that's 211, 11th Airborne guys, and then you had 111 up here at Wainwright. I may be kind of flopping them, getting them wrong, and I'm sure I'll catch shit about it from my buddies. But
it's all right. Navy, so we don't know either.
So they had all the guys from J-Bear. They had to fly in and do a jump in onto the airstrip, and then they had to assault the Mout Town, and it was a full military evolution for a week or some extended period of time. And it was hilarious because when they airdropped in their vehicles, you know what the Wainwright guys' solution to disabling those vehicles was?
What's that?
They took bulldozers and they piled snow around them.
Hell yeah.
The J-Bear,
that's actually pretty dope.
the J-Bear commander, when his vehicle was airdropped, they didn't do anything with it except put an Apple AirTag on it. And that's how they located him. And it just happened to be the commander. An Apple AirTag, disassembled a chain of command.
And see, that's the kind of out of the box thinking that kind of stuff requires.
Yeah.
And like the kind of stuff that you don't out of a military manual or years and years and years of doing the same thing over and over again. That's some out of the box shit right there.
Exactly. And so the exercise drags on, and there's just this hilarious shit. There were meme pages made for the exercise, but I have a friend who works in the intel shop, here on Wainwright. I'm not going to throw his name out, to undermine him. But ultimately, what we found out is that the dudes on the other end of the exercise were, GWAT, born and raised. That's what they knew, and they were still using those tactics against an equal partner force. And that equal partner force was ruining them for it. So I think a full bird like colonel and then a command sergeant major were actually relieved of duty at the end of the exercise. It was that bad.
There's an old saying that's. Oh, go ahead, Mike. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I said, damn.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's an old saying that, and I don't know who it's accredited to, but basically every general is always fighting the last war, right? Because that's all they know.
Mm-hmm.
you see that throughout history, right? We got like we go into World War I, we've got machine guns, tanks, trenches, airplanes, and we're still doing mass wave bayonet charges, across minefields,
And
and going into each thing. And now here, guys coming out of the GWAT and all these dudes that like we grew up like being like, oh, this guy's badass. This guy knows what he's talking about. And I think of it in the terms of like YouTube, 5 years ago, how to set up your plate carrier from a Navy SEAL. This is how we did it on the teams. And everyone's like, oh, it's so sick, dude. I'm going to build my plate carrier like that. And then it's like, but you're not a Navy SEAL and you're not on a small team like that. And you don't have IR drones overhead or a C-130 on standby and Rangers ready to exfil,
And not only that, but like, let's circle back to my experience, up here in an Arctic environment, living here my entire life. Talking with one of my friends who's, I think he's an E6. His commanders wanted him to take his unit out, and he wanted him to do like patrol tactics and assault positions, like entrenched enemies in 4 or 5 feet of snow. You're not patrolling through that.
Hey guys, real quick,
you're not assaulting anything. But yeah, so what I was saying was, his command wanted him to, train on. He wanted his unit to train on patrolling, in 4 or 5 foot deep snow, and then assaulting, entrenched enemy positions. Like, you're not going to patrol through that. And then, let's take that out of the military, saying you're not going to be able to patrol through that. Like, let's put that in the everyday civilian grid down scenario. Who's plowing the roads? Who's out there plowing the roads? How are you going to get there?
Right. I mean, heck, how are you going to get out of your driveway?
Exactly. How are you going to get out of your driveway? Where's your buddies at? Do you have room for your buddies to stay on your property? Can you compile everybody's families into the same, structure? And you start adding in all these factors of this like extreme austere environment, and you start going, holy shit. Like, this isn't a joke.
Right. And I think it's important to try to make those plans as best as possible, but also understanding like the limitations of things like that. And I think that is unfortunately one of the biggest holdbacks, especially like in the Minuteman communities, is where the military does have us beat in that sense is the idea of logistics. That you can have an entire logistics hub and a base full of people whose sole job is to get people and things from point A to point B. And it's a lot harder to do that, I think, in this kind of community, because it's like even you've got 12, 15 people. Well, where do you keep all your stuff?
Exactly.
Or do you guys all live in the same block? Or are you 15, 20-minute drive away from each other, which with a car, not far. Cars don't work. That's far.
And that's what kind of gets me concerned sometimes is one of my buddies lives like, 30 miles from me. I've tagged him in a few posts. Dom Ermy, he just got into camera editing. So if you guys want some cool photos or videos, go check his page out. But he's a really good dude, really great shooter. And he's in the same, like, I'm taking my headset off while I say this. He's in the same ballpark age as me. So if you want like a second source to bounce this Arctic stuff off of, like go talk to this guy. He's another born and raised. I grew up with him, and he got into this at the same time. And another example of, having the right resources, people that are willing to teach you and keep you up to speed of like how far you can get with this sort of thing. I just wanted to throw it in there as well. I just told Mike I would share with you, but just like an example, like a specific example of how cold it can get up here. I got toned out for a fire at work, and we took a mutual aid engine there, and the driveway was so crappy. It took 1,100 feet of hose to reach the front door.
Holy crap.
1,100 feet. And I had to walk down that. We started a chainsaw right up there at the truck, and then, carried a ladder down, and then I got handed a set of spanners, and I got sent back up, the line uphill to go tighten couplings to prevent water from leaking. And then I got water in my eyes. And this was not a warm weather fire. This was another like 25, 30 below with wind chill. So my eyelids started freezing together.
That's crazy.
Yep. And I had to walk my happy ass up, 1,000 feet of hose line to go stick my face in front of a heater at the engine.
Yeah. That's just insane, because like it's cold enough. It's already a big enough problem. I would think like just being cold, and then I don't try to comprehend that and responding to disaster like that is just miserable.
Yeah. There was one thing I wanted to touch on. I know I discussed like some layering. A really good resource for layering in the winter. Spirit Systems is a really good video on layering that is pretty well applicable to almost every environment. Up here, specifically our outer layers are a little thicker to keep that cold out. But then, you have your breathable layer and then, layer 1, layer 2, if you follow that system. Mostly with us, it's whatever works.
Right.
We're not sponsored by Spirit Systems and have like a ton of equipment that we can just go, this is the ideal layering system. We're working with what we got. We got hoodies and Carhartt bases and probably surplus tops. But the other thing to keep in mind as well is when you get into that 35, 40 below is let's go back to that scenario, that overnight that I threw out. As I got to the camp, I started getting cold. I threw my outer layers on, my heavy outer layers, emergency set, and then I started hiking out. I didn't take off my super heavy, thick external layer.
Yeah.
And then I started moving and working.
Yeah.
And then the sweat started building up.
Right.
So
right.
I had to, and I was, my thing with like right then and there is I was already sweaty. If I had taken off, those outer layers, I would have like started, having a serious problem because, moisture kills.
Absolutely.
Moisture kills in the yard.
I was going to say it was like that just builds up and then you're just going to be freezing.
That is a recipe for disaster. So, when knowing when to like put on and take off layers is crucial. So in order to compensate, I had to keep walking, and I would like feel the sweat build up, feel the heat build up and everything, and then stop and like lift the back of my jacket and all my layers and let the like cold air run against my back to cool me down. And then throw it down and then keep going again, and then stop and then cool down again. Because that was, either I was going to have, a serious problem and I was going to start sweating. And then, I had also, my water was frozen. So out of water, start thinking about, instead of hyperthermia, because when you get all bundled up and you're working and you're not hydrating, can't cool down, what starts to happen?
Right.
Imagine becoming a heat casualty in the middle of 35 below.
Yeah, that's so yeah. You don't think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I had to like just keep bouncing back and forth between doing that, and it's not ideal, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. That's you really don't think a lot of times. And again, it comes back to going out and doing it. That if you're not doing this, those are things you're not thinking of. And it's really easy, it's really easy for someone to think like, oh, well, it's cold. I want to wear a lot of layers. I don't want to take them off because I'll get cold. And then, they start sweating and they don't do the right stuff. Next thing you know, the minute that, they stop and settle in for the night, they're freezing and they don't get up the next morning.
It's bad. So yeah, ultimately, like before you go out into anything like crazy conditions, if you can't try your gear and like, what's something that's nice, nice, like sunny weather, it could be a little overcast. If you can't get out and make sure that your stuff is comfortable, your ruck is fitting right, or your rig isn't too heavy, or, you've got, the right amount of layers on so that you don't start pouring sweat or start getting cold. If you have the option to like test that out, do that before, have that forethought that I should probably try this before I take it into the field, and it could cost you your life.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I'm a big component of testing your gear and not being just a fair weather person with it either. Going out and get into slightly, try it out and better your kit, learn from it, and then push yourself a little bit further into that, the next season and then the next season. And I heard you guys talk about the winter overnights, and our winter was not anywhere near as cold as you probably get. I think with us, it got down to like 16.
Lucky.
Right. Swimming weather.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was still, for us, it was pretty cold, and it was a lot of lessons learned. I've done a couple of them over the years, and every year I get a little bit better, and I learn, what I brought too much of, what I brought too little of, what I forgot, what I needed to bring. And it's good to go out and do those things too, because you get to shake out your kit and you're like I remember the first time I did one of these things, you're like, oh, just put it all in the bag. Right. And then you get there and you're like, I didn't need half this crap,
Yeah.
So, and then you're like, oh, what did I forget? What did I not bring? Like, the first year I went out, our whole thing was you had to make your shelter was our whole thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Forgot all my paracord.
Oh no.
Luckily, it gave me some, but like the whole rule of our thing, like when you get out of the truck, like you can't get back in for 24 hours. Right. And so, yeah, I'm up there and I'm like, crap, I don't have any paracord.
So what was probably the worst thing about this entire overnight I'm talking about is when we built our shelter, we dug through the snow down to the ground. We didn't get down to the bare ground, so we had, thermal draw underneath us, pulling all the heat out of everything. We did our best to get a fire, but I don't think we were down low enough, or if we had been on like bare ground, maybe it would have worked better. But the other thing that was really, really crucial, we found out later when me and two other guys, tried to make a break for the truck, is the two guys who used their snowshoes to drive into the snow to secure a tarp that was hanging over all of us were the two guys who had to go back, me and another guy. So
oh no,
we made that entire hike back without snowshoes. Like we had to. And then we decided, we were going to take a shortcut. And I was like, once I'm started, if I'm going, I'm not stopping. So I'm having to crawl up this slope with, 3-4 foot deep snow. And I'm like, I'm post holing all the way up. I'm on my hands and knees, dragging myself up. And I don't think there's ever been like a situation that I've been in where like, I am not prepared for this.
Yeah.
And you have that first thought and everything else just goes downhill. It's ridiculous. We had a guy out with us. He was a special guest, Frontline Trace. He was out doing some video, filming a series. I'll have to send it to you.
Sweet.
And you could see the exact trip that I'm talking about. He, he was like, I went through the Army and got my Arctic tab, and that was harder than anything that we had to do. It was like one of those things where it's like, well, I mean, we're training on our own dime. We're getting good training, obviously, because, we're being harsh on ourselves. But
yeah, well, that's the thing too. You think about is like if you're doing it out there on your own, you're spending your own time, your own money, and you don't have the safety net that some of the military training has, to where there's people on standby and they got people prepared for that, and you're just if it goes south, you only got yourself to blame. So I think that's a really important part of it, is getting out there again and doing the things, because if you fail, you learn from it, right? And don't be afraid to fail. Like if you go out there like that and you're like, we got this, and you realize we don't got this.
Exactly.
That's an important part, because then you're like, okay, what could we do better?
And having, especially to kind of top everything off, having the guys to like share this experience with, having actively participated in and working to be like part of the community, being somebody that people want to be around, learning some harsh lessons along the way. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I've had my share of drama. I had to step away from Instagram for a little while just because
absolutely
I needed a mental break. And knowing when you got to take that second and step away and take a mental break is when is important. It's crucial. If you can't be there and give the guys your best, then you got to start reevaluating some things, because having that guy next to you who's gonna pull you up by your pack straps and be like, hey, we got to keep going is it's the difference between life and death.
And that's not just a good thing for like personal knowledge. That's a good thing too for anyone who's interested in any type of leadership, whether it be in a role like this or in anywhere. Like a good sign of leadership is not only to know yourself good enough to know like, hey, I need to take a break or, something like that, but to also like look out for your guys and make sure that they're good to go. Because if your guys aren't squared away and they got problems that are going on and their mind's not in it, they're no good to you. And it's not and I don't mean that like in a negative way. It's just like they can't be there if their mind's not there.
And ultimately, I'm not the same person, back in November, December when I started this. Fun fact, I haven't even been doing this lifestyle like a year. And I've had probably one of the greatest like communities of guys that I could lean on. Morgan Fraser, 6416 Aaron, dudes like that. The Edwardian, Redbeard 907, who's also my roommate. I live with him, which
Oh,
is pretty
nice.
cool. Yeah, I have a great resource right there. If I didn't have, these guys to lean on and, try and pick me up, and, I've had my moments where, I've pushed the guys away because I've been dealing with some shit. And then you got to remember those guys make mistakes too. And sometimes you got to get out front and, tell them like, you're having an issue, you're dealing with something. And if I didn't honestly have those guys, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be the kind of man that I am. I don't think so. Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. I think that that's one of those things that, again, I know there are other people out there who, when we say community, they think like, oh yeah, whatever, community. But for me, it's like, no, like this is a community, like an actual community, and you need to find that. Like no one can do it by themselves. As iron sharpens iron, right? Like you need other guys with you who similar mindset, you guys got the same goals, because you help build off of each other and you help build that sense of community. You help, not feel like you're alone or you're the only one in this. You learn from each other and you better each other. And I think especially for men, like we need that, like we're not these, lone wolves that, TV or whatever wants to throw out there. Like we need community and we need like-minded people. And I know for people like me, coming out of the military, you lose that and it's hard to find again. And finding it again in a Minuteman style community is really nice, because the biggest thing you miss is the camaraderie and that kind of brotherhood, and you get that back.
Yeah, and I went to a modern, I wouldn't quite say a public school. It was, back when I, applied there, it was a school you had to fill out like a job application to. It was a career school.
Okay.
You could go and get life skills, good certifications, and that's how I got my EMT1. I had it right when I turned 18. The state certified me, which was pretty cool to have up here, a high school program like that. But getting out of high school and having gone to modern school, everybody went their own ways. Nobody was really. You thought that I got my buddies, I've got my posse, I've got my group or whatever, and then graduation hits. I didn't even have a real graduation. I graduated year of 2020, so it was a virtual graduation.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had the vid. I had the vid year, but you get out and you realize nobody's there for you. So
Yeah.
once you get into something like this, you have a better, like deeper understanding of what brotherhood is. And
Yeah.
my first ever like learning moment for what a brotherhood really meant is when I worked a CPR call. I was a senior in high school volunteering at my department. I'd ride to calls with Dad, who was the deputy chief, and he'd pull shifts from home sometimes, and I'd just bring my gear home and I'd ride with him. And I worked a CPR on somebody I had a class with.
Oh man.
And getting back to the station to help reservice and having the top two of my shift like grab me by the shoulders, march me over and sit me down, and first words out of their mouth, inches from me, are you okay? And they're not gonna take yeah for an answer. They're gonna want to talk to you about it. And the second that question was asked, I was like, people care. These people care about my well-being. So
it's a really good thing to have, and I think I think honestly that's a great place, I think, for us to kind of leave this off on. And
yeah,
I think that's a great closing statement there. Is finding those people that care, whether it be in your career, whether it be in your personal life, whether it be in the main lifestyle, thing like that. Like it's so important, I think, to find a group of friends like that. And I think that the biggest thing again is you really learn who your friends are, like big F, not little f, if that makes sense. I'm totally stealing this from an Instagram short I saw earlier this week. I don't remember who the dude was that said it. But he was talking about the movie Tombstone.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, hey, Doc Holliday, why are you doing this? And he goes, well, Wyatt Earp is my friend. And the guy goes, well, I got a lot of friends. And he says, I don't. And the guy's point was that, you realize, he said that something along the lines of, you begin to realize that if you think that you have more than just a handful of friends, you probably don't actually have any of them.
Yeah, no, that's it, you hear some words that just ring in your head, and I think that's some of them.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Well, man, it's been great having you on here. It's
Yeah.
been fantastic. A lot of knowledge for sure. And I know, like, especially October when we're recording this. So hopefully everyone's going to take some advice from you and gear up for the winter months.
Hopefully. Yeah, I mean, I'm available on Instagram to answer any questions that anybody might have. LAT 65_shooting. I'm there. My DMs are open. Feel free to hit me with anything you guys have related, fire EMS, Arctic considerations, lifestyle. I'm not perfect. I'm by no means a role model, but I'll give the little bit of advice that I got. So.
Yeah, for anyone listening, if you're not following him already, not only is he an awesome dude, as you can tell from this podcast, but he actually puts on some pretty quality stuff on his Instagram. Some pretty good. I was scrolling through your reels again today, and it's pretty quality stuff. So I'll put his link in the description to go out, check out, and follow him. Also, again, a reminder, if you're looking for coffee, Blackout Coffee, they support us, help support them. You get 20% off when you enter the code that's going to be in the description for any coffee that you get. Admittedly, we do get a little bit of money out of that, but all of that money is going to go to upgrading the quality of the podcast, hopefully eventually getting us into video so you can see all of our lovely faces when we have people on.
Me, a lovely face. You're full of crap. So, all right, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. It's been great to have you. Thanks for joining. Have a good one.
Yep. You too.
All right. Everybody else listening, see you next time.